Life Audio.
Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployer from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips as these experts and their guests dive into the hottest topics in homeschooling. Whether you're a seasoned homeschooler, just considering this path, or anywhere in between, you don't want to miss a minute of these enlightening conversations that will empower your child to thrive in their homeschool environment. Empowering Homeschool Conversations is starting right now. Join us to give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Today, we are going to talk about experienced advice on building a homeschool support network, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So welcome, ladies, to the show. Welcome to all of our viewers that are watching with us. We definitely want to make you part of this conversation. But let's kick it off with this question and just let's see where this goes. But how do we know actually what we need as far as a support community, and how do you clarify those needs, or how have you done that with your own family and homeschooling in the past?
Okay, I'll bite. It's wherever the biggest, for a special needs child, this wasn't necessarily true with my other kids, but for my special needs child, it's wherever the biggest pain point is where I need the support. So if it's communication, I start doing research for communication. And if it's a particular subject for curriculum, then I start trying to find resources for that. But it's really hard, I know, when you have a special needs child to find in-person live resources that you can use. And which then when you find those places to interact, then you start building your support network that way. So I've had to build my support network for her has been more leaning towards therapists that we've interacted with, and occasionally other homeschoolers that I find who are also homeschooling special needs kids. My daughter has moderate intellectual disability and vocal tics and other distracting things that isn't a really good fit for co-op classes and things. But so we've kind of done things on our own and just taking her out in public and regular places. When she goes out in public now, anywhere we go almost around town, and we live in a suburb of a huge, outside of Washington, D.C. And so, there are lots of people around here. But whenever we go in our little town areas, they're like three little towns kind of smushed together, people will always say, "Oh, hi." And I was like, one day she was with my husband. They're like, "Hi." And he's kind of looking at her. She goes, "Oh, she comes in the library all the time." And then another time, we're in Walmart, and it's just kind of crazy. Our network of people isn't what you would think. It's kind of people like the lady from the library, things like that. So that's kind of how we're doing it. But really, it's when I'm looking for a support network, and it's related to her special needs, that it tends toward the therapists that we've worked with.
Yeah, so you found it from both professional side as well as community side, just being out and about and interacting with people while you're doing that instead of just kind of isolating yourself. So yes, those are all available to us. And I'm sure almost every parent watching has those resources, but we don't often think of them as our community resources. So good point, Stephanie. Yeah.
I think sometimes we we do tend to run to the fires first, whatever they are.
Yes.
We have to. I mean, that's just the reality of things. But if we can create a quiet moment for ourselves to just sit back and actually take stock of the whole picture, not just that pain point, I think that really can help. Because the biggest issue may be really a smaller thing that just, has some underlying roots that we need to deal with. So if you take that time and sit and just kind of brainstorm through it and just throw it all down on paper or something, and throw that on paper and see what you list, and kind of take a few minutes and pray over it, try to rank it in priority or see if anything's related, so that you can kind of say, oh, I'm seeing a pattern here now that I've taken a minute and stepped back and looked at the big picture. So I know I've been blind to some of the deeper needs sometimes because I was busy just putting out fires. So, and I really do encourage the praying over it part, because ask God to show you really what your needs are, and what your child's needs are, at the deeper level, so that you can begin to minister to those as well and take care of yourself or your child in the way that he would have you taken care of. So that's kind of a first step that I suggest to people. And I suggest it on a regular basis, not every week, obviously, but, every 6 months, a year, or something like that, so that you can look at how things are changing. Things do change, right? My needs when my child was very small were very different than when she was a teenager or now as an adult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point to make too. It's constantly changing, and for any of you like me, I've moved so many times while homeschooling, so it's like this constant hunt to try to find your community over and over and over again. So Dee, you're not alone. I'm finding just difficult to find support community. I think that it's more typical than not. Instead of people saying I've got my community, I think we see that a lot of. I've got this great homeschool community. A lot of times that just doesn't always happen. You kind of have to piece and put it together. Leilani, do you got anything to share on this?
Yeah. Actually, it was really interesting because Stephanie was talking. It seemed like she was talking a little bit more for the younger kids. And then Annie was talking about the spiritual side of things. And I'm listening and I'm thinking today, for example, this morning. So I have a child, my oldest son has ADHD, dyspraxia, anxiety disorder, and OCD. So I'm thinking, so he's in high school now. And so this morning we actually participate in cross country at a homeschool co-op, which is a great opportunity. They can actually compete against private schools. And it has been so good, like across the board. But while he was running, I was able to just sit and talk to parents. And the biggest thing that's been on my heart for him specifically, not my younger kids, but well, yes, my younger kids too, but I'm thinking about him because he's my high schooler, is their future and how are they going to function as an adult once they're out of the house? So what kind of things that they need to prepare, college, are they going to go to college, this, this. And I just sat there and just questioned these parents that have already had kids that went through college, some with ADHD, some without. And just going back to what Annie said, just praying about what does the Lord want, like sifting through all the advice. And then what is it that the Lord wants for my son or wants me to share with my son? And some of it is just keep your mouth shut and be a resource and not try to push him, because that also might be a point of rebellion. But the fact that I have that community that I can reach out to, it's really nice. Other adults. And I keep seeing in the chat section that people are having a hard time finding that community too. So there's always that I'm sure you're going to address.
We will continue this conversation after a short break.
From the Kendrick brothers, the creators of War Room.
Miss Clara.
It's hard for a woman to call out the man and her son. I just need some prayer support.
We pray that the Lord will open Isaiah's eyes so that he could see himself the way that the Lord sees him.
What kind of man do you want to be? Isaiah, welcome to The Forge.
The Forge. In theaters now. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. Tickets and showtimes at theforgemovie.com.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.
Yes.
I would just love to just put in one little plug there that Leilani made a great point that you will get advice from everybody. Everybody has an opinion, and they're not bad in their circumstances, but not all children with Down syndrome are the same. Not all children with autism are the same. What works with one may not work with another, and we really have to be mindful of that as we hear other people saying, "Oh, well, this was great for me," or whatever. It might work for you, but it may not.
Right. Yeah. And I made sure to point that out before we started our conversation too, with the audience, just that, that, yeah, it's hard because I think that's why I brought this up, because when we first did our first recording, remember, ladies, I think we stayed on for almost an hour and we had quite almost an argument about what homeschool community support looked like, because it hasn't even been the same for us. And some of it hit some really raw spots where our families have been hurt greatly because we have leaned into places where we were told we were going to get support and we did not. And unfortunately, that is when you put yourself out there, you put your children out there, and that will happen more likely than not. I hate to say that, but just keep persevering. That community is out there and it is worth the wrestling to try to find. So, I know Melissa had said that her son has learned to greet neighbors and ask them, "How are you?" And it's helped them to become good neighbors. Yeah, it's as easy as that. And I think we sometimes just make it too complicated. We think we need that established community that's out there. So what has worked for you all, and what kind of, I guess, what support maybe have you needed or your child needed, and where did you find it, and maybe some of the most least likely places?
Okay, I'll go.
That's a hard question.
Stephanie's going to take that one.
I know. Go, Stephanie. I'm going to think and meditate on that one for a second.
Yeah.
Well, one thing you mentioned about the conversation we had before, the reference was basically to church hurt, because we had two completely different church experiences, and one of them was very little support. There was one woman there who had a deaf son, and so she was very interested in helping my daughter, and people expressed an interest in helping, but they really didn't know how or what to do. And at that time, I wasn't emotionally able to help them understand how to work with my daughter. So part of it in finding the community. Now, if I had known better, if I had heard me talking back then, what I'm about to say now, maybe things would have turned out different. But I realized that, and this was a smaller church, maybe like 130 people on Sundays. So they didn't have a lot of resources, because right now we're going to a church with, 400 people on a Sunday morning, and they have a special needs ministry because there are enough people who have that calling in that big of a group. A lot of needs are met through that church, and one of them is the special needs community. With this other church, I realized that to form my community there, if I had the wherewithal to do it, I would have had to spend a lot of time educating them on special needs, and in particular how to interact with my daughter and what she needed. And I just didn't have the emotional energy for that. So one of the things when you're setting up a network is be prepared to educate the people around your child to what they're doing, to what they need, provide a little book, a about me book or something to give to people, something where you can, so that way, like, I would have preferred to done that rather than like have to explain it all the time. Because every time we went to like a new church or a new school, I always cried, like having to relive my daughter's history. So you can write it out in an about me book and have it, give it out to people, family, friends, anyone in a potential network for you. But now we're in a church that has a robust ministry because the founding pastor of the church had a daughter with severe special needs. And so it was kind of built into the church fabric. But if you don't have that, you have to put on your advocate hat. And if it's easier, just write it out.
Yeah, I think that's really important. What you said, Stephanie, is that you weren't emotionally, because I found myself in that same boat when I started joining homeschool co-ops. There was nothing left of me. And so I needed that community to just take over. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You have to have the ability to advocate, because that community can't support you if they don't know what you need. But you need to be able to tell them what you need as well. And I was at a point at the beginning of our homeschool career, I didn't even know what I needed. And I had grown up in a family that was so all about masking everything that was bad. And so I hid my own emotions from myself and my own needs. And that's taken years for me to work through, to just say, oh, this is what's going on underneath. And this is why I struggle this way. And this is what I need, not just what my child needs. So thank you for pointing that out for sure. Annie, Leilani?
So
what do you
yeah. So it's what as Stephanie said. Yes. The biggest thing is a lot of people really, they want to understand and they want to help us, but they don't know how. And that's hard. Like I can understand that, because my daughter also has Down syndrome. And then I've got 2 with ADHD. And that teaching and that advocating and being prepared. So, and the original question was, where did you go to find the most, or where did you get support that was unexpected, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay. So maybe I'm like weird. I don't know. But I'm very get out of the house social kind of person. And our congregation actually meets on Saturdays, which means my Sundays are free. And Saturday, I'm actually the children's director for all the children's stuff. So I'm constantly advocating, right? And I'm exhausted by the time. So I like to actually go to different churches because it's fun to try different things. My kids at co-op find friends that go to a church, we'll go visit. Okay. So one church that I went to, I remember I was asking the children's teacher, just his advice on some things. It was just a general conversation. And he said, when I teach, because he's been doing it for 20 plus years. And he says, when I teach these kids, I want the parents to go into service and get filled, because this is a ministry for the parents to go bathe in the Word of God, so then they can take their child home and then they're filled, and then through the week they're going to continue. Mm-hmm. So he was like, the ministry is not for the kids, the ministry is for the parents. And so I was struggling because, Naomi doesn't want to sit in class and color her sheets. She wants to go in the corner and she wants to play with the kitchen. And I'm always like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. I don't want you in here. Get it out. Like just this constant pushing me away until that's when we had the conversation. But, coming from that perspective, I thought was really, really interesting, because you can't, it's not about just the kid. It's also about caring for the parent. And sometimes we always forget about ourselves, which is on the contrary. I've also been to a church and I went there for like a really long time. I would visit, and they actually would not have Naomi in their classroom unless I was physically present. And so I've had to advocate, and I actually really love this church and love what they teach. And I just love it in general. So it's been, and my kids do too. So it's been really hard to pull away from that, which I won't, because I like it, but I have to be on, like, I'm here. What can I do? I'm here for Naomi to help support. Right. But it's not to the point where over a period of time, the youth director or the children's director has approached me and she's like, I need to take you out for coffee and I want to learn how we can let you go to service so that we can watch Naomi, which, I mean, that's exhausting. But I don't know. I guess I'm just weird that I I don't know. I'm crazy that I'm doing this, but I'm doing it for her. I'm doing it for my other kids. But the other church that I've been to, I love that perspective that it's for the parents, and we need that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the truth. Yeah, I think these families who have children with special needs are. The fields are ripe for the harvest. And so many churches do miss the boat on that. I've been in a couple that have been, had great ministries in place. I've done ones where I was told outright that's not really important to them, which is so sad. And, but sometimes you have to, figure, well, they have to have the heart to do it. You can educate, but they have to have the heart to do it. We focused a lot on churches here, which would be a natural source of support, one would think. But I'll just throw out a few other ideas because we do need to have a brainstorming list here. Because our support does come from beyond churches. But I would just, obviously, we think of our family connections, parents, grandparents, and sometimes, if we can just get, if we have family support, maybe we can find, one routine thing where maybe your mother or father or whatever might take charge of one thing that would let you have a moment or something. There's something like that you wouldn't necessarily, throw everything on them or expect everything. But if you can negotiate one thing, that might be a big help. You may have neighbors, maybe lonely people in your neighborhood, elderly people that you could just invite into your home. It's a risk to do that with anybody, whether it's your neighbors or people you meet at church. But if you start to just invite people into your lives, there's time, there's energy, there's a risk for sure. But every now and then you find that gem, that one person whose heart blossoms and grows in love for your child. And that kind of a connection is really important for your kids and for you too. Maybe it will be more for you than the child too, like Leilani said. There are other supports that we can find. Some states allow public schools to provide supports that we might need. Things like hybrid options or career training options, music, social activities, life skills groups. Where I lived most of the time did not allow that, but other states do. Maybe there might be a family in your co-op or something that has a very responsible teenager who would like to be a mother's helper for a few hours a week. If you have a couple extra dollars in your budget, it might be worth it to bring that young lady into your home for a little
trade tutoring. That's what I did. I trade math tutoring for babysitting.
I would say even look for that one other family, that maybe one or two families. You may not be able to dive into that homeschool co-op, but if there were one or two other kindred families that you just sort of connect with and do your activities with, that might be where you can swap things, time off, and just let your kids grow in friendship just within that small group. We don't need the big giant group. These can all work. It'll just depend on what's available to you.
We will continue this conversation after a short break.
From the Kendrick brothers, the creators of War Room.
Miss Clara! It's hard for a woman to call out the man and her son. I just need some prayer support.
We pray that the Lord will open Isaiah's eyes so that he could see himself the way that the Lord sees him.
What kind of man do you want to be? Isaiah, welcome to The Forge.
The Forge. In theaters now. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. Tickets and showtimes at theforgemovie.com.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.
Yeah, and Dee said, sorry I didn't hear you. I find that taking the child and community will help expand on that. So that's what Stephanie was talking about. And I know, Stephanie, you had talked about the library too, and that's where we found a lot of support. Librarians were extra support to me. Then, of course, just being in the library, the activities they offered. I found our Historical Society for our state was also an incredible resource for me because they have programs going on all over the state. It was history lessons, live action, and I would always call ahead, same with museums or anything else. When are the school groups coming? Because that's not when we're going to be there. Or do you have quiet hours? That's when we're going to show up. But then those people kind of became my teaching aides as well, because they had already prepared lessons that I could just, work off of, and we could get out of the house and do something and be out in community. Leilani, Stephanie, do you got anything else to add? We've just got a couple more minutes for this conversation, then we're going to start diving into some questions.
I'll go first. I'll be super fast. It's like 2 sentences. I was just going to say, sometimes you have to really put yourself out there, and even though there is potential of being hurt, it's really, really worth it, because if no one sees you, they don't know that you exist, and it's worth it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just going to add that sometimes when we're looking for a support network, we want to find kind of this neurotypical fit of our kids' age. And when your child is really far behind their peers, very often that's more of a painful experience than a helpful one. My daughter has always been attracted to the older caregivers. When we're at events and things, when there's a buddy thing, those are the people she considers her friends. Every once in a while, we'll find another special needs child who is her friend, who she can develop a friendship with. But mostly, it's the neurotypical helpers. And the places you can find these people are, if you have any colleges nearby where they have a major in special ed, put a notice, and this is like, I'm old school, okay, put a notice on the bulletin board, whatever that looks like at that school.
Well, they got virtual bulletin boards now. Yes.
Virtual ones, or talk to a teacher then, say, hey, I'm looking for, someone, do you have anyone in your program who would like hands-on experience with this particular type of child? And, just a few hours a month or whatever, even that's another place to look for. Because again, our kids will often attach to those older kids, supervised, of course, because you don't want anything bad to happen. But there are ways to find companions, and you can find them in the therapy programs, the special ed programs. Those are the two main ones. And the reason I say thought of those is because our church, like I said, is pretty robust, and they just had a retreat for a few families. And the people who volunteer for that are typically that are young, or either special ed teachers, or going into some kind of therapy where they want to work with special needs kids.
Yes, yeah, and to get that experience, and you as a parent can teach them so much more too than them just working with your child like they would in a different kind of program. So great advice. All right, we are going to transition into some of your questions. I'm going to throw this one out since it's kind of related to what we were just talking about. But Kelsey asked, how do you address the question, what grade are you in? Or what grade are you going into? I'm beginning to really wrestle with this question with others, although I know it's how people connect with each other.
I focus on age. I know in the state of Florida, by law, like literally by law in the state of Florida, as a homeschooler, unless you are going to do something with the public school system, you are not required to ever say your grade. And so it's become like a habit with just the people around us when they say what grade you're in, they're like, well, and there's this long, like, when fourth grade and math and this, but like, I just focus on age and that's it.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Embrace the homeschool answer of, well, if he was in public school, he'd be in X grade. That's usually, if I'm trying to relate to someone who's in public school and has no clue, but if it's someone in homeschool, they'll just laugh because they already know that no one really goes by grades. And the kids usually don't even know what grade they're in because we don't really go by grades. So I usually just say, well, if they're in public school, they'd be in 6th grade, or he's, whatever. I don't say what level they're working at. I just say what grade they would be in.
Right. Yeah. And we had to do the same thing because at church activities and other activities, they were segmented by grade level. And so we just picked, this is where you should be at. And age wise. And I have had some friends say developmentally, because one has twins with 2 different children with learning differences. And so she's put them in different levels so they can have their own peer group friends. Just do it, but then follow that year. Don't change it in the middle on them, because they have those friends that they're going to follow through with. That's a lesson from me. So anything else on that?
I almost feel like it's 2 different ways to view grades. Are you looking at grades as in socially or grade level as in academically? Because, for example, youth group, you want to follow the social stuff. And,
right.
But then if you're going to put them in a math class, that's grades. And so it's totally different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's pop on to the next question. I am looking, says Dee, I'm looking for ways to teach my homeschooler that doesn't want to sit still and learn. Looking for tips and tricks.
Timer.
What do you got, ladies?
I got a timer. That's what I use.
Ah.
Like a timer. And we build, we start 5 minutes.
Is it a visual timer?
Yeah, I don't have it up here with me, but it's like a little clock, and you can get them off of Amazon. They're really cheap, and they're different colors, and you can turn the knob and it shows you, ours is purple and it has the purple space. But I had to create one for when she goes into timeout versus schoolwork, because that's actually a little side tip, because she associates the blue timer as timeout timer and being in trouble, and the purple timer is schoolwork and doing that kind of activity. So we just add on, we're at about 15 minutes.
Not the blue timer. No.
Yes.
Oh, dear. Oh, there's a lot. I think one of the things, my daughter was very ADHD in her mind. Okay, so her mind was always going in 100 directions. My son, who's neurotypical, was very hyper physically, and they just had different needs too. So it's you need a whole bag of tricks, really. And I like the timer idea. I definitely have used that. I tried with my son to give him a lot of opportunities for movement, especially before trying to sit down for an activity. So there's that. If an activity could be done hopping, I would let him do that. But everybody does have to learn to kind of settle in for some work sometimes. So, but try to think about how do they learn? And try to gear your activities towards that, so that you have you're working on their strengths. But the mind one, I think, is an even harder one to tackle, because it's very hard to keep the focus in the mind.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
also,
so much to say about this too.
Yeah, heavy lifting, large body work will actually cause the mind to focus even more. Mm-hmm. So if you've got some heavy things around the house you need moved, or you just want to put some weights in the room that are safe and for toes, or you wanted to have them do pull-ups, it also resets if they're spinners. This is one of my aerial tricks. If you get going really fast and you start, get really dizzy, if you do a quick pull up, it'll actually reset the brain so that it's not dizzy anymore. So
really,
yes, it's pretty cool, because I spin a lot, and sometimes I can't even walk after I spin. So just do that pull up.
I was going to say that's one reason we run in the morning and doing cross country, because it helps reset everybody. But I also, so I talked to, she's a occupational therapist, and we were talking about fidgets in general and how every single person that has that sensory processing or just unable to focus, there's a fidget made just for them. And to try all these different fidgets. And I have ADHD, and I'm not going to hide that, but I never have been able to find a fidget that fits. So she had me sit at her table and just go through all her different fidgets and try them out. And sure enough, there was one, and I found like I'm a rubber band pulling person. And then I had my son do it, and he liked those rings with the pressure. And there's something about your body craving that pressure. And when they get it, then they're able to reset and focus.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Another question came up. Does anyone have use a standing desk for kids? I know my 25-year-old has used that just because he has back issues. I don't know if it's helped much with his ADHD, but yeah, that's one thing. And then visual schedules. Does that helping a child choose the order of the day? Does that help a little bit with work? Have any of you found that?
I have a thought on the standing desk. We didn't use a standing desk, but what I got was one of those chairs that has a base with a big ball that sits in it.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of bouncing on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
We did use that for a while. And that, eventually became too much of a distraction.
Yes.
But initially it did work, and it was helpful. And then what was your second question? Oh, the visual schedules. Oh, yes. We've used those.
Schedules.
As a matter of fact, we still use that. But now we can just use the calendar on the wall for like if we're going places out of the house. And my daughter has learned she can recognize the days of the week. So she knows, she went and pointed to Monday today because she knew Monday is shopping day with Mom. I'm glad this started later for us. I could get out and get that done so she would be down here with me. But yes, visual schedules. And sometimes, you have like the first then. And I've actually done that just with my hands. She's nonverbal, so she often has to pick. So I would say first this, then this, and then this. So she could actually pick up to 3 choices. But yeah, even just using your hands for first then, if you don't have like the little pictures to draw everything out. Yes, right. Visual representations of any form of what you're trying to get across is helpful, I found.
Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, go ahead, Leilani.
Oh, no, I was saying have them choose the order of the day.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I know, like, we've tried that, and I've heard a lot of, but I know we can't do that just because of our schedule in general. But my oldest son, instead of a visual schedule, but he's also high school, he has a checklist. And I know that's great for ADHD because as he finishes a task, he just checks it off and he can jump around and check. But for the younger kids, I've had to keep it on a strict schedule because of, my time I need time with Hannah to work on her math. I need time with Naomi to work on stuff, and I can't have them all happen at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. That
everybody can't have total freedom for sure. But where they can have choice, I think that's important. And just even like a visual schedule or even one that you cut apart each activity, that is, whether it's or maybe even an object to represent it or whatever, but that they can physically move it if that's their the way they learn best. But I think everybody should use a schedule.
Well,
that's an executive functioning skill.
Yeah. Speaking of schedules, I got a question from a brand new homeschool mama. Katie Clark says, first day of homeschooling kindergarten, our schedule's already going off the rails. Should we do a week or 2 of unschooling with me figuring out our rhythm, then circle time, academic, teaching, math works best for my child? I thought we'd get outside first to help my son regulate, but it went way over time, and now it's almost lunch here. Anybody relate? Yeah. Katie, you're not alone.
Yeah. And I want to point out that in homeschooling, kindergarten is really actual academic learning time is really maybe an hour and a half in kindergarten. And the rest of the time can be the playtime outdoors, because if you're out there with your child in the outdoors, you can be teaching all kinds of things. So don't forget that the hardcore academics of kindergarten don't take that long, but there's a lot of learning that takes place around that. So yes, be free.
Absolutely. And Dee says she has one more question. So Dee, put it up there. We'd love to hear it.
And I want to answer the question. I saw someone asked a question about the kid who shuts down, Charity, when the child who shuts down. When
I saw that one too. Okay. And I was like, I have one of those too. So go ahead.
Shuts down when they get something wrong. Yeah, that's a great one too to address. Yeah. So we've addressed the kindergarten one, and we're moving on to that. I would just say for the unschooling, just take your schedule. You will learn a rhythm. It might take you a couple years, but once your child gets that rhythm, I remember the day it was like my kids just, this is what we do. And they got up, got their books, and we just started moving on. So just know it will happen, and it may take a while. You have to build that homeschool rhythm within your family. And that's a habit you have to build over time. So yes, let's answer.
Like writing it down. I was going to say, as she does it, unschool, write down. It just naturally happened. We were going to do reading right after lunch. Write that down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
All
right. So let's pop on to that question about a child who shuts down when they get something wrong. Any tips? I've got those too. So I'd love to hear what you ladies have to say.
Well, my daughter, my son does that to some degree, but my daughter really does that. Again, she's nonverbal, so she can't answer directly. And so if she gets something wrong, she can't ask the next question and she can't explain her answer. And so it's really bad, where even when we're doing school now, if I say the word no to anything she asks or indicates with a question, she can shut down. And I believe the reason is because her brain goes into fight or flight. And the reason it goes into fight or flight is because the question was too hard. So one thing is to avoid direct questions, like yes or no questions, or saying no. Teach yourself to say other things besides no, like, let's try that a different way, or how about this, or did you notice this? There are all kinds of ways to say no without saying no. So come up, make your list of 10 ways to say no. And the other thing is, if they're shutting down when they can't get something right, it's kind of an emotional response. And again, it's related to that fight or flight. The solution might be to break whatever they're learning into even smaller steps. Mm-hmm. So you can give them small wins getting to that answer that you're looking for. And that has been helpful. Just if she's shutting down, it's because the step is too big from what she already knows. So I just have to back it up, break it into 4 or 5 little steps or something. So that's what I do.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I'm writing a bunch of stuff down.
And I think, I have
real quick. Yeah. The often it's like, it just seems to be overwhelming for the child. So you gotta, and sometimes it's our own response. I think Stephanie already addressed those 2 things. We might also consider whether, depending on the child, whether they have a misunderstanding of is their worth all wrapped up in being right all the time, or what they're doing academically, and how can we teach them that they're still valuable even when they make mistakes? How do we respond to mistakes in general? How do we model when we make mistakes, and how do we respond to them? So this is like a lot of training, also character training, and so that's all wrapped into there. It's not such a quick and easy thing that'll just turn around.
Yeah. And there's a lot of nonverbal things, and probably just things that we convey in our own household that we don't even know that we're conveying. Maybe we were brought up that way, and even without it being said, it's being taught. And I know with my kids, I have twice exceptional learners, so they were gifted in one area and then would struggle in another, and they felt like they needed to perform at that gifted level in everything. And so then all of a sudden, I am stupid because I can't do this like I can do that. And they would do the comparative thing on their own, whether I did it or not. And it took a lot of, we all struggle in some area. Those people that it doesn't show up academics, it's probably somewhere that they can hide, And so just for your kids to know, we all struggle in things, and not everybody's going to be perfect at everything either. So there's a lot that goes into this answer. Anything else before we move on to the next, Leilani?
Yeah, I was going to say, I love what Annie said about character training, because in that moment when that kid shuts down, sometimes an argument could erupt. And, and I know, like, from experience, like you yelling at your child in that moment, like you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
But I think all of us have, like, gotten into
We
that.
have.
It's like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I have argued with my daughter, and in my head, I have thought, oh my gosh, why can't she get this? And she's so stupid. Like, in my head, I think that. I don't ever say that out loud. But
good job, Leilani.
I can't say that.
I'm like, well, but I may say something but I also know, like, there's potentials of hurting her feelings, and I'm like, okay, I am supposed to act Christ-like. I'm supposed to represent God in this, and He also forgives me. But one thing I heard Andrew Pudawa from IEW say, and I've actually heard other people repeat this over and over, is that when your child is stuck on something, never hold back helping your child through that problem. You can never cheat. Like, with homeschooling, cheating is not like public school. So never hold back helping your child. And also to consistently remind them, it's okay. I'm here walking through this with you, and I'm going to help you. And that always reminds me of what Messiah does with us. Like, He walks us through those difficult times, and we're a model to our kids. This is what we do. The other thing that I've learned from experience is, if there is, like, they shut down, you can't, because of fight, flight, and freeze, right? You can't reason with them at all. So that's when it's time to just stop for the moment. If it takes like 15 minutes to regather, or, like, I have a girl, so I literally just hug her until she can calm down. I did the same with my son too, actually, now that I think about it. Yeah, I did. It was the hug, and then, like, okay, take a 5-minute break and regroup. So yeah, that's what I've done.
Yeah, those moments are great for prayer too. I mean, pray with your child when you're in that tough spot. I mean, it's, dear Lord, help us. We call it with our children, and we're going to see. We're going to see how He works in our lives.
And ask for forgiveness.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
We've had that conversation.
Yeah. I wrote a whole book on be angry and train your kids. So
we're getting trained character-wise as much as they are.
Definitely trains it in us. Someone had asked if there would be a recording sent out about this, and then I had another question if there would be a replay. You'll be able to get it if you went into the, since I'm assuming you're here, you went into the StreamYard account, and a replay link will be sent to you right after the broadcast. But also, we are going to take just this discussion part and have it on our podcast as well, which is Empowering Homeschool Conversations. You can download it anywhere. And so you can have the replay of the whole, with the teaching and the giveaways and all of that on the webinar, but also the discussion that we're doing right now will be added to our podcast. So I want to pop to a next question. Let's see. I'm going to go up to the top of the list. Bobby had asked, I'm having a hard time finding counseling for my child with a PDA profile on autism spectrum. Behavior therapies are counterproductive. Any insight?
Can you explain PDA for people who aren't familiar with that term?
I'm not familiar with that term.
Is it pervasive? No. Can you type in what PDA is? We're uncertain.
Yes. So if you can share with us.
I was thinking the detachment thing, but I don't think that's right. But I will say real quick, Melissa had asked if there were other ways to say no. I can't think of them right off the top of my head, but I will write an article and post it to the SPED Homeschool website, and you can find it there. So I'll do that in the next couple of weeks. I'll write an article with all that in it.
Okay, that would be great.
I
Yes,
also
and know
looked
that
up
the majority of these ladies are also contributing to the content on our website. So if you're looking, Leilani's posted some good videos, and then we've got other content. Some of it is behind a paywall, other of it's free. So definitely be checking out our website for that. What about memorization? That was a great question from Sarah. How do I get my kids to memorize? Any ideas there?
music.
That's
Music,
the thing. And movement.
yes.
Music and movement.
And movement, yes. It depends. Like, I'm a kinesthetic learner. If I add movement to something, I'll remember it right away. Some people are more auditory, so you get that song in their head, and they're going to be able to remember that. Maybe you got a hands-on activity or something visual that they can be able to see, take a picture with their brain, and then it will always come up. Maybe you can rhyme it with something. There's just so many different ways. I know we had Right Start Math on earlier today, talking about card games to help us with those math memorization facts and just being able to play around with them. And that used a lot of different learning modalities to interact with things. So,
yeah, I think if we just, in general, we memorize best what we can get all 5 of our senses involved in. So any way you can think to do that, just think outside that box. Like the one, I forget which person was a guest on earlier, talking about how they would repeat the facts, the math facts out loud.
Right.
Because when we hear ourselves say it, it makes us remember it better. So sometimes reading something out loud is going to be better than reading it inside your head. Especially if you have a child who doesn't have much of the internal processing. My daughter, I was told, has no inside voice, and I can attest to that. So it's best for her. It's somewhat, inappropriate at times, but for her to read things out loud, she does it. Or even when you just move your mouth, kind of, your actual vocal cords are involved, and it does something different in your brain. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So PDA, coming back to that, Bobby helped explain that, and I also was looking that up. Pathological demand avoidance. So when somebody asks them to do something or commands a behavior, demands it, that they shut down. So, and unfortunately, when you're in therapy, usually a therapist is asking in a very direct way to do something. So any suggestions there?
It's almost like you have to make a game out of everything, and that they have to feel like they're
I think that is probably the best bet. Make it more play oriented. A lot of times when I couldn't get my kids to talk too, I would take out puppets. Puppets were our best friends, and they would often get them to talk about things that they weren't even wanting to talk to me about. Even though I was attached to the thing, it really didn't matter. The puppet was who they were talking to. And so we could talk about some deeper subjects with the puppet versus just between me and them. So yes.
The other thing that sounds like, because my daughter just started doing that, she's refusing to take a bath or a shower. And so I have to, the only way I can to get her to do it right now is with a stronger motivation than her motivation to say no, because I don't understand. It's irrational, that all of a sudden not wanting to take a bath, and I have no idea what it's tied to. And then she also has this thing about my shoes that's been ongoing for many years now. And it's almost, so I've started treating the shoe thing where she just refuses to let me wear shoes in public. Okay. Unless we're going shopping for her. If it's shopping for her, we work to where I can at least wear them then. And I'm treating that. One of my sons developed PANDAS, which is sudden onset severe OCD. And there were a lot of things that he was no longer able to do that he had been doing before. So I was able to, I'm starting to treat her attitude toward my shoes with the same approach they would use with the severe OCD, which is just exposing a little bit at a time. So I don't know if that would work with the PDA or not, but those are the two things, is getting a stronger motivation than the motivation to say no, and then, which would be impossible if your child's doing about everything. I understand that. And then kind of treating it with the slowly exposure. It's exposure therapy. I don't know what it's called, but just exposing.
Right.
A little
You can
bit
use
more.
that for eating too, with children who have sensitivity issues, or with their just food in general or smells. And over time, it's amazing how that slow exposure, when you're very cognizant of what you're doing and you take it little step by little step, instead of being demanding, just like you got to accept this, and it's too much of a hurdle. I think we talked about that earlier today. Those hurdles have to be lowered. We have to work up to those points, and sometimes we don't see that as steps that we can help our kids make in getting to those successful goals.
I'll just throw out this idea too. I haven't dealt with that particular issue diagnosis, but I will say I have a child who had a very automatic negative response, and that's not reasoned. It's just like, boom, no is out of the mouth before anything. And so it's like, how do you deal with that? You have to, it takes a ton of patience. So I'm just going to throw that out in advance. You need to build time into your schedule if you haven't, if you want to try to break this habit. But being able to just pause in that moment and not say anything, just look at them and wait. Sometimes they begin to, and they'll be like, what are you doing? Because that's different from the usual response. And they're it's disorienting for them, which it might break them out of their pattern. But it's really frustrating when you're on a very tight schedule. So you have to loosen that schedule and just be able to go, okay, we're just going to wait a minute. So, or
especially when you have other kids around too.
Yes,
I see Leilani laughing.
Oh, I know. I totally understand. This is not easy. It is.
I know. Well, I run into the problem where I have my daughter with Down syndrome that takes her time and says no and refuses to do things and that. But then I have a son with OCD that if we're late to a place, he has a full-blown meltdown. So it's like this.
Oh, I got one of mine was always 10 feet in front of me. One was always 10 feet behind me. And I'm just trying to feel the middle there. It's almost like that.
Oh, that's great. So yes, good summary, Melissa. Pause, look, wait, pray.
Yes,
definitely.
Sister.
So we have one last question I want to get into for the last couple of minutes. Dee wanted to know about how effective are playrooms, or maybe a sensory room, or just what have you seen work in your own homeschool? Have you utilized this, or have you made a space in your house? I know we've even had a show about making a quiet space or things like that.
The playroom can turn into their schoolroom eventually, which is what we've done.
That's awesome.
But having a quiet place, that's always been a challenge because I've got 4 kids.
Yeah.
And finding a quiet place is almost virtually impossible sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so each of the kids has a place where they can go. But I know the schoolroom, which each of them have a corner because there's 4 of them. The biggest concern that I have right now dealing with middle schoolers and teens is the electronic time. And in a play, just something for, you have littles, you don't have to worry about that right now, hopefully. But I want to I want to be able to walk into the room at all times and see their electronics. That's the only thing they cannot have behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm. We even do that for our adult children. It's a family, it's a house rule at our house. And so nobody does, unless I'm recording, I don't even shut the door.
Sometimes it's a blessing to have a smaller home because but the quiet places, some kids really do need that quiet time.
They do. Yes. That alone time, because some people recharge by being around other people. Some recharge by being alone. And I think honoring that, and honoring the space in your home for what your children need is really going to go a long way. For all of you, you might need a space, Mom. So make that space pretty. And yes, and mine, I love being on the floor. So my space is on the floor.
Make a space in your schedule. Make a space in your schedule. Like, give yourselves 20 minutes a day where everybody just goes to their space and does their own thing, whatever, it's, that can really help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been an amazing discussion, ladies. For all of you that maybe have never joined us on Empowering Homeschool Conversations, our broadcast schedule is listed on our website at spedhomeschool.com. It's actually, it'll take you over to empoweredhomeschool.com, where that schedule is of upcoming live broadcasts. Some of them will be recordings, but on Tuesday afternoons at 12:30 Central is when we have our conversations. And so we have guests coming up this fall that will talk about a lot of topics, but our YouTube channel has 1,500 videos on it of past conversations. You can search it. Don't watch all of them.
Take care, everybody, and God bless. And we'll see you next time right here, same time, same place. Bye. I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
Once in a generation, a podcast comes along with the power and eloquence to inspire us all.
This show will entertain you while you wait for that one. Join two best friends, author and former history teacher John Driver and comedian Johnny W. for hilarious and authentic conversations about life, history, culture, faith, and everything in between.
You can listen to Talk About That wherever you find your podcasts or at lifeaudio.com.